Coming up on Primetime News, Korea's political battle for the truth about civilian surveillance by the nation's spy agency intensifies after an agent involved in the scandal dies in an apparent suicide. Expectations grow for the end of the MERS outbreak in Korea, with the country reporting no additional cases over the past 15 days. A hospital deemed an epicenter of infections also resumes its operations. And Japanese construction company Mitsubishi Materials makes a landmark apology for using American prisoners of World War II as slave laborers. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello and welcome to Primetime News on this Monday, July 20th. I'm Hwang Ji-hye.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Thank you for joining us. The apparent suicide of a seasoned National Intelligence Service agent adds a new twist and fans the fiery political row over the spy agency's hacking scandal.
Rival parties held a meeting today to address the snowballing allegations, but failed to reach common ground. Our Ji Myung-gil starts us off.
Lawmakers on the Parliamentary Intelligence Committee failed to reach an agreement over when and how to launch an on-site inspection of the National Intelligence Service. The spy agency is facing major allegations of hacking and surveillance on civilians. Rival party floor leaders plan to meet on Tuesday to lay out specifics for the check and whether they'll accompany hacking experts.
The NIS deals with protecting national security, therefore, using the hacking scandal politically and revealing too much information about the NIS could jeopardize this. Rival party lawmakers should work together in finding the truth.
The ruling's Henry party is pushing for the inspection to be conducted as soon as possible to stop the scandal from being exploited for so-called political gains. However, the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy wants a parliament-level hearing and separate probe led by the prosecution.
The recent death of an NIS agent has raised more suspicions. There are inconsistencies. The spy said there wasn't any wiretapping of citizens, but deleted information related to the agency's operations.
The NIS agent surnamed Im was found dead in his car on Saturday, along with an apparent suicide note that denied allegations the NIS meddled in the 2012 presidential election and monitors citizens. This incident occurred on the heels of a revelation that the NIS purchased a hacking program from an Italian company in 2012. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, the MERS health scare that jolted Korea is winding down as more than 2 weeks have now passed since the country reported its last case of the virus. On top of this, all hospitals under close MERS watch are now running normally after the final one, Samsung Medical Center, got the green light this morning. Our Connie Kim tells us more.
With the outbreak of the Middle East respiratory syndrome nearing an apparent end, all 15 hospitals under close MERS watch are now back to operating normally. Samsung Medical Center in southern Seoul, considered the epicenter of the virus, is fully operational as of Monday after lifting its partial temporary shutdown that lasted more than a month. 91 people, nearly half of total MERS patients, were confirmed to have contracted the disease while at the hospital. Seoul's MERS response headquarters said no additional traces of the virus were detected in hospital wards and the emergency rooms where MERS-confirmed patients were treated. Adding to the good news, the National Medical Center, on the forefront of quarantine and treatment of MERS patients, has also started to receive outpatients and patients for hospitalization. With Korea seemingly back on track to recovery before the outbreak, the government promoted Korea's need to normalize all personal exchanges during a briefing session for the diplomatic corps in Seoul on Monday. Seoul's foreign ministry said Korea is now safe from the virus, as no additional MERS patients had been confirmed for about 2 months since the first case. It noted no foreign tourist was infected with the disease in the country. The first MERS patient was confirmed in late May, and since then, 186 people have been confirmed with the virus, with 36 deaths. With the figures remaining unchanged for more than a week, officials say it could signal the end for the MERS outbreak as early as next month. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And there's some more good news regarding the outbreak. Despite the crisis that sapped spending, the number of travelers on domestic flights came to 13.2 million in the first 6 months of this year, up more than 13% from the previous year. The Korea Airports Corporation says ticket sales are also expected to reach almost $1.5 billion this year. The upward trend is in contrast to inbound international passengers, which saw a huge decline in the wake of the MERS outbreak.
The leaders of Korea and Honduras held summit talks in Seoul today. Topping their agenda was boosting energy cooperation, which is expected to resolve the severe power shortage in Honduras and also help both sides meet their greenhouse gas reduction goals. Our Choi-Yu-sun reports.
The Honduran economy is one of the weakest in Central America, recording a GDP of $19 billion last year. With the country greatly lacking infrastructure, many Hondurans suffer from a chronic shortage of electricity. Celebrating 53 years of diplomatic ties, Korea and Honduras agreed to join efforts to improve the power supply system in the Central American country. Some of the methods include establishing an eco-friendly village that is energy self-sufficient, reducing power loss during electricity distribution, and supplying electric vehicles. Honduras is also interested in the Korea-based Green Climate Fund project to produce electricity from methane gas found in landfills. At a joint leaders conference in Seoul, President Park Geun-hye said while considering their mutually beneficial trade structures, the two sides agreed to actively spur trade and investment and increase joint energy infrastructure projects. While the deal will help both sides to develop expertise in the field of new energy, it's also expected to assist them in fulfilling their pledges in greenhouse gas emissions. With its energy initiatives in countries like Honduras, Korea hopes to garner international approval to fulfill its reduction pledge of 37% relative to a level forecast by the year 2030. Korea has also agreed to share its knowledge from the Semaul Undong, or New Community Movement in the 1970s, to develop and modernize the Honduran rural economy and continue to support Honduras' Special Economic Zone project for job creation. Choi-Yu-sun, Arirang News.
As Japan nears the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II, a local firm there made a historic apology over its forced labor of American soldiers captured during the war. That company, Mitsubishi Materials, is the first Japanese conglomerate to express such remorse. Still, an apology for Korea's forced laborers has yet to come. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
A prominent Japanese corporation for the first time has acknowledged and formally apologized for the forced labor of American POWs from World War II in its Mitsubishi mines. At a solemn ceremony on Sunday by the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles, Mitsubishi Materials Corporation's senior executive officer made a sincere apology to about 900 POWs that suffered hardships in Mitsubishi mines and industrial plants.
As the successor of Mitsubishi Mines, I offer the most remorseful apology to those who suffered harsh and severe hardships.
One of the surviving POWs, James Murphy, accepted the apology he has sought for decades.
This is a glorious day, for one thing, because for 70 years we wanted such action.
The Japanese government has apologized about the use of U.S. POWs used as forced laborers during World War II. Mitsubishi says it plans to apologize to the Netherlands and other countries that suffered forced labor by the Japanese. But when asked about plans to apologize to the tens of thousands of Korean victims, he said it has no plans as there is currently an ongoing lawsuit on the matter.
I have not much to say as there is a lawsuit ongoing with the Korean victims.
Time is of the essence as most surviving victims are well over 80 years old and may die before they receive compensation or an apology from the Japanese firms. The Japanese government, as well as the companies that use Korean forced laborers, have refused to pay any compensation, saying all issues regarding its colonial rule, including sex slavery and monetary reparations, were covered by a 1965 package. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories, concern is growing in countries like South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. that China's recent economic instability could negatively impact their own economies. But according to a recent study, the country that will be the hardest hit is North Korea. Our Son Jung-in tells us more.
North Korea's high dependency on China will take a toll on the communist state should the Chinese economy fall apart. This, according to Seoul's Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, which released a report on Monday. The report said North Korea's exports to China accounted for 72% of its outbound shipments from 2009 to 2013. The country's imports from the world's second-largest economy accounted for more than 76% during that same period, most of them being daily necessities like oil, corn, and flour. This is in stark contrast to South Korea, whose trade volume with China makes up only about 20% of its total trade with the rest of the world. North Korea's trade with China has grown at an alarming pace over the last 4 years, mostly due to the surge in demand for raw materials. In 2013 alone, its exports to China rose more than 17% compared to a year earlier. However, the volume sharply declined following China's economic slowdown last year, dropping by 2.4% from a year earlier, mainly due to a fall in demand for major export products like iron ore and hard coal from China. Experts say that amid recent volatility in China's stock markets and slower growth, Pyongyang may not only face economic damage, but also political instability if it fails to find alternatives for China. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
South Korea's strong exports have kept the economy ticking over relatively nicely in the past few years, but a combination of external factors have dented outbound shipments in recent months. It's stoking concerns that the days when Korea's export-oriented strategy worked wonders could be over. Our Kwon So-ah brings us this report.
Vendors at markets like this, sitting right next to the world's #1 shipbuilder, are directly feeling the effects of hardships Korea's manufacturing sector and exporters are going through. This small restaurant is a classic example, run by Cha Hwa-sun and located in a market nearby Korea's biggest shipyard operated by Hyundai Heavy Industries, where her husband is employed.
So many shops have closed down. Everyone in this area is struggling.
When the company was going through good times, the markets here were bustling, but they aren't anymore as new export orders have been on the decline since the end of last year.
And it's not just ship exports that are being affected by tumbling global trade volume. Posting negative growth of 5% in on-year exports so far this year, the combination of external factors such as the debt crisis in Greece and China's stock market meltdown are expected to hurt domestic exporters even more in the months to come. Still, some remain optimistic that Korea can avert these circumstances.
We need to reduce our dependency on China and broaden our export markets. Korea should also put greater attention on the United States, as we expect to see the U.S. economy picking up steam going forward.
Other strategies include moving China-based manufacturing back to Korea to enhance production domestically. Shifting focus to exporting more services is also viable, as the value of this sector has jumped in recent years. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The International Maritime Organization is a specialized UN agency tasked with ensuring maritime safety and security and preventing pollution from ships.
Come January 2016, a new leader will guide the organization with a vision of bridging the gap between developed and developing nations and promoting the importance of a global approach to maritime affairs instead of a regional one.
And that person is Mr. Im Gi-taek, the current president of the Busan Port Authority, and we have him with us today. Welcome, Mr. Im.
Thank you to be here.
Well, first of all, congratulations, of course.
Thank you very much.
We understand that other than being a seasoned mariner, you have acquired a great deal of practical knowledge of working about how the IMO works and everything that has to do with it. What goals have you set for yourself and the organization, and what changes do you seek to implement?
First of all, the IMO has a fundamental missions, which is promoting maritime safety and protection of marine environments, which I have to fulfill my responsibility to take care of that one. And having said that, I would like to promote some harmonization and concerted effort among IMO member states. And third one is I'd like to enhance the management of the system IMO as a whole. And finally, I would like to raise the international profile of IMO worldwide by means of a good communication with the medias and external international organizations, including United Nations. Yeah.
And IMO is under pressure to meet the ongoing challenges of overseeing the global shipping industry. What can the IMO do to improve relations with the industry, and what can Korea take in that respect?
In fact, Korea, is one of the top country in terms of the maritime industry. So based on our technology and expertise, I believe Korea needed to contribute more to IMO work. So one is, providing some the technological information and data to IMO, and also provide some financial assistance for developing countries. And having said that, IMO, Korea needed to go along with IMO by means of the sort of a strategic point of view, win-win strategy together with the IMO. So in the end, I hope the Korea would be one of the leading the member states, being respected much from the other member states.
And of course, you taking on the reins is a good first step towards that.
Yeah,
Korea,
so.
Right. Korea's side, how much influence do other countries have on the shipping business, and in particular on international organizations like the one you're about to lead, the IMO?
Nowadays, there is a great representation from mainly European countries, since they have got a lot of technical expertise and data based on a lot of study. So, however, the IMO should be remain as the global rule setter. So there should be good cooperation between IMO and the European countries. Having said that, I would like to do some bridging role, between developing country and developed country in terms of IMO rules of regulations. So I have to do, provide some technical assistance for developed countries. And I have to promote some communication among member states, particularly between the developed country and developing countries. Yeah.
Focusing on Korea, from your perspective, what can the IMO do to help improve ties between the two Koreas?
North Korea is also one of the regular member states within IMO. So North Korea has the right to enjoy as a regular member state. At the same time, North Korea has obligation to comply with the IMO convention regulation. So as a role of Secretary General, I have to serve a member state, including North Korea, so that they can comply properly with the IMO convention. Also, they would cooperate with the other member states. So nowadays, I have seen, sort of improvement in terms of activity of the North Korea. So I am, in a way, optimistic about that point.
Thank you so much for your insights today, Mr. Im Gi-taek. We look forward to seeing your vision of Voyage Together becoming a reality come 2016.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And for today's top international headlines, we now turn to our Lee Sun-ho at the News Center.
Today's focus, Greek banks reopen after 3 weeks of closures. U.S. and Cuba at last restored diplomatic relations, and the UN Security Council is set to vote on a nuclear deal with Iran.
Sun-ho, let's turn to Greece. What is the situation like there?
Well, guys, after weeks of drama over Greece's third bailout package and averting a financial meltdown, the nation's banks finally reopened, but not without a sense of caution. Limits on withdrawals are still in effect, citizens are not allowed to transfer money abroad, and the stock market, well, it still remains closed. The withdrawal limit has been raised to 460 euros instead of the former daily limit of 60, which is about 65 US dollars. But the situation is far from the economic norm that the nation is used to seeing. Greek locals are certainly not satisfied.
Every day, life is quite hard, but that's not our fault. The Eurogroup and Draghi are the ones to blame.
EU officials are hoping that the bailout deal will be finalized by August, at which point Greece will have to make new payments to the European Central Bank to pay off its growing debts. The bridge financing loan of $7.7 billion will be able to sustain the nation only through July, but won't be sufficient to cover August. With Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras' acceptance of the strict bailout conditions set by the European creditors, Greece saw a value-added tax increase of 10% on food and public transportation. Now he faces backlash among Greeks, with even his own government seeking to carry out new elections soon. On the other hand, well, investors, they seem to be pleased with the developments. And a historic move, the United States and Cuba have reopened embassies in each other's respective capitals for the first time since 1961. Early Monday morning, the State Department was seen hanging a Cuban flag in its lobby alongside other countries that have ties to Washington. As for the opening ceremony of the Cuban embassy, 500 people were invited, along with the negotiators that helped restore bilateral relations. Citizens in both countries welcomed the event, as the nations are expected to see a boost in tourism and eventually trade in the near future.
For us, this is significant. It's important. I think it's a decisive step towards normalizing relations. In other words, as Cubans, we celebrate this and are waiting to see what could happen and what could continue from this point on.
Now, over in Cuba, the flag-raising ceremony there at the U.S. Embassy will have to be put on hold until U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry makes his official visit in August. The two countries have returned to better ties after U.S. President Barack Obama and Cuban leader Raul Castro announced the move back in December. Despite the breakthroughs, many thorny issues, of course, still remain for full normalization, namely Cuba's human rights abuses and its will to maintain a tight hold on its state-run economy. And this just in, the United Nations Security Council just endorsed a groundbreaking nuclear deal between Iran and the 6 major powers. The agreement is set to measure to curb Iran's nuclear program for a decade in exchange for relief from international sanctions. Drafted by the U.S., the resolution has already met unanimous adoption and has already been approved by the 5 members of the Security Council. They all hold the veto power. The remaining 10, the non-permanent council members, also showed no objection to the draft. Now the resolution has passed, the deal will go into effect within 90 days. Now, following this, the UN's nuclear watchdog, the International Atomic Energy Agency, or the IAEA, will give a report regarding the past and present issues with Iran's nuclear program. Now, the UN vote comes as lawmakers in the U.S. are also beginning their own review of the deal after it was sent to Congress by the Obama administration over the weekend. And that's all for your international news for now. I'll see you right back here tomorrow.
Monsoon conditions are in full effect this week as showers and clouds are forecast to cover the entire country, so be sure to have an umbrella handy. And as for tomorrow, sporadic rain is expected in most parts of the nation. Western regions will get between 10 to 40 millimeters of precipitation, while other parts will see 5 to 20 millimeters during the day, along with a chance of thunder, lightning, and gusty winds as well. And the gray weather conditions will put the brakes on the hot temperatures we've been experiencing. It will be a tad cooler tomorrow as the daily high here in Seoul gets up to 29, while Daegu and Gwangju rise to 28, and Busan will top out at 26 tomorrow afternoon. And on to other regions. It seems like Daejeon and Jeju Island will see a high of 30 and 29, while Dokdo rises to 24. Now, due to the rain, readings will remain below the seasonal average through the week here in the capital, hovering in the upper 20s with very high humidity levels. Well, that's all for the weather. Don't forget to grab that umbrella before heading out tomorrow.
pedaling like little ants there. Speaking of which, I heard Ant-Man is breaking box office records, but they're only opening here in Korea in September.
I know, I can't wait to see that in Korea.
It'll be a long wait. Well, that wraps up our newscast. Thank you so much for staying with us.
We'll be back tomorrow at the same time. Goodbye for now.